Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. My name is Jay Agner, host of the First Customer Podcast. Today, I'm lucky enough to be joined by Michael Bertoni of PhillyTech. How you doing, Michael?
Hey Jay, thanks a lot for this is great. Really appreciate you having me on your show.
Thank you for your time, brother. Every time I mention your name or mention tech in Philly, you come up, and I feel very, fortunate to have some of your time today. So,
Yeah,
uh,
appreciate it.
let's go back to where it started. Where did you come from, originally, and kind of where did you go to college? That's usually the way we start.
Yeah, so I grew up in Northwest New Jersey in a little town called Long Valley. It's out by Morristown, New Jersey. It's by Chester, Mendham, Hackettstown. I lived there from 79 to 89, and then I moved to Salisbury, Maryland. I played football. I was a player of the year in high school. I was Eastern Shore and the whole state of Delaware player of the year in football. I was like a football nerd,
Wow.
football head. And then I played in the Big 33 for Pennsylvania. And then I went to the College of William and Mary down in Williamsburg, Virginia. And that was really great. 5 years there, played ball on a full scholarship to the College of William and Mary, and then came back up to New Jersey. My first job was actually in financial services for a company called Equitable AXA. And then I just didn't dig that. So I got into tech and software for Computer Associates in 1999. So that's
Gotcha.
my story to get into tech.
Get into tech. Yeah, and I had mentioned to you earlier, I was looking at your background and my finger got tired scrolling through your LinkedIn. It's a very long, illustrious career you've had. Um, it was a very methodical march from, your finance, original background up through account executive to business development to sales and a bunch of different things. Talk to me about the first company that you actually founded, and kind of what was the story behind that?
Yeah, so my march through tech, so I worked for about 17 years in technology in a lot of different, so software, tools, storage, data storage, cloud, big companies, small companies, local companies, and basically in 2015, I founded PhillyTech. We just had our 8 year anniversary.
Wow.
So when I started PhillyTech, my dream and my vision was to work with SaaS companies, software companies, high tech companies. And at the time, I was doing way too much. I was doing recruiting, I was doing sales, and I was doing software development. I was doing everything for these companies. And a few years ago, I decided to really focus on the recruiting and hiring. So right now, we are a hiring and recruiting agency for SaaS and high tech companies.
Got it. Um, so what led you to start your very own company, right? It sounds like it probably naturally came to you based off of just what I know your personality and your background, but walk me through kind of how you got there and opened the doors.
Yeah, great question. So at about 2010, I was working for a company called Alliance Global Services, Alliance Consulting in our region. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks. Like I said, I didn't start my company until 2015. But in 2010, 2011, I was like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this for other people? I was always the top sales guy in either a software, SaaS, high tech. I was always the top guy. I was always blowing out my number. And it was just a mindset. My parents, my dad just always worked, right? He always had a job.
Mm-hmm.
So it hit me in like 2011. And, I had a family, I had kids, I had a wife, and it's like, how do I do this? So basically in 2015, towards the end of 2015, I was working for a company called Anexinet. They had some downsizing, and basically they pushed me right into it. So I got into it in my first year in business. I made like $40,000.
Right.
And I was a senior sales guy that was making between 175 and 250,000 every year.
Right. Yep.
That was a rude awakening, right? It's like, okay, I'm doing this, but now I got to make some money,
Right.
right? So that's my story. And so my second year is really when I started to make like close to that. And yeah, just figured it out. I just kind of jumped into it. I kind of had some ideas of what I wanted to do. I was doing way too much in the beginning. I was doing software development. I was building apps. I was doing sales and lead generation outsourced for companies. And I was also doing staffing. And I was even doing some 1099 like corp to corp work. I mean, it was just insanity. Way too much.
Right.
So I got focused.
And so let's go back to the beginning of your company. Who were your first customers when you ventured out on your own?
Yeah, so some of my first customers, like I worked with a company locally here called Core Dial. I remember we hired a PHP developer for them. I worked with a company called GSI Health, who is in Philadelphia. We hired, I think, a PHP developer for them, right? So there were some of my early customers. I was always working with SaaS companies and software companies and high tech companies. That's always what I did before I started my own company. So I just had an affinity for working with these companies. I mean, most of these companies are small companies, amount of people, anywhere from 5 to say 25 people. And yeah, I just knew that I could help them. I knew that I could offer value to them. So that's kind of how I started and how I got into it.
Did you go knock on doors? Like, how did you actually land those first customers?
Yeah, I mean, just like we had talked earlier, Jay, I'm a big LinkedIn guy.
Yeah.
I mean, so I have been using LinkedIn as an engine to do lead generation, networking, sales, social selling, right? So it was all on LinkedIn. And then, so before I started my company, I was always working with these software companies. They used to call them ISVs, independent software vendors. I was always working with these companies. So I had network in the area.
Right.
I had people I knew. So I was always really highly networked. I always knew a lot of people in the region. So, I mean, that's how I did it. I mean, I was a sales guy. I was a senior sales guy who always had 10x pipeline of everyone else on my team. I was hunting. I was doing lead generation. I just always loved doing that. So that's how I did it. I just got out there and just used LinkedIn, networked, went to events, things like that.
So your sales background really helped you kind of jumpstart your own business, right? Because I think I hear that a lot of like, and one of my, Jessica Corrado, I actually mentioned her earlier. She's my hired gun for marketing. She mentioned like she thinks everybody who owns a company should have taken some sort of sales training. And you having that big of a background and that kind of, high caliber of experience in sales must have helped you kind of kickstart things, right?
Huge, huge. I mean, so I've always just been really good at getting in the door. So I really have a passion for lead generation. That's how I created my recruiting company. I mean, so we'll talk about that in a little bit. So I was always very, very good at breaking down doors, generating leads, building pipeline. I mean, you know it, Jay. I mean, if you have great pipeline, if you're always thinking about building pipeline and you're building with the right types of companies,
Right.
it is hard not to be successful. I mean, there's a lot of issues and challenges all the time, but lead generation, lead generation, lead generation. I mean, if you're a business owner listening to this, learn how to do lead generation. LinkedIn is the best way to do it.
Right.
Right. And I just learned how to do that. And I have a whole methodologies and processes to do it now.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I'm late to the LinkedIn scene to some degree. I mean, I was always even when I was running my company to the side, I never really used it for a selling tool. But now I kind of see the power of it. And obviously, this isn't like a LinkedIn, sponsored podcast unless they want to sponsor this podcast.
Right.
But so you mentioned kind of niching down to SaaS. How did you cut those other things out? Like, what made SaaS evident to you that like that was your lane and like that's what you should focus on? How did you cut out those other things and niche down on SaaS?
So my expertise before I started PhillyTech, so when I worked at companies like App Labs, so my best stint when I worked for a company was probably 2006 to 2009, where I worked at App Labs. and I basically started a division, an ISV division. So that was what we used to say as software companies. They were independent software vendors. That was that wasn't SaaS back then. There was a
Right.
little bit of SaaS, maybe with Salesforce and a little bit, but I was always working with these companies. So I always had an affinity for them. I was always networking with them. So it was very logical because I was already selling to them. I was already working with the executives. I already knew these companies. So this best run that I had with App Labs, I was closing like 2 deals a month for maybe like 24 straight months. And they were mostly ISVs, which are software companies. So I just developed this big affinity for working with these types of companies. And that's where I figured out how to really specialize.
That makes sense. If somebody doesn't have the sales experience coming in and they own a services business because they did consulting or they did whatever and they started their own business, what kind of sales training, kind of off the top of your head, would you recommend? Are there any programs or any sort of, what would you recommend somebody go do if they're not a super strong salesperson?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that I would do is I would go out and research on Amazon. I mean, it's so easy right now to educate yourself.
Yeah.
It is easier than ever right now. I used to have this thing that I used to say all the time called a university on wheels. That was when we used to put CDs in the car and we would listen to CDs. So I was always a big learner. Now I just turn on YouTube. I mean, if anybody's listening, I would turn on YouTube. I would start asking questions to Google. I mean, it's great. And so I would focus on that. I'd go into Amazon. I'd start researching specific books. And then I would go into LinkedIn and I'd be just trying to find people in the local region
Right.
that work in your particular industry. My growth coach, his name is Scott Messer. You might know him. He's big in this region. He has a company that he sold, a sales training company called Sales Evolution. So they're a really good company to teach sales. So usually in any region you are in the country, there are going to be local organizations that focus in sales. There's going to be general. So my recommendation with sales is you have a general knowledge of sales, and then there's specific sales for your specific industry.
Makes sense.
But YouTube, Google, Amazon, start searching, start going down. And there's a lot of gurus out there as well, like a lot of guru type people that you could start to follow and start to learn from.
Any books specifically that you can think of? I read Fanatical Prospecting recently by Jeb Blount, and I'm like, it kind of turned everything I had thought I knew on its head and kind of called me out for a lot of the BS that I, for reasons why I've put off, calling people or, a bunch of different. Is there any books that are on your list that you'd recommend?
Yeah, Fanatical Prospect is actually a really good one. I mean, one we used to, for many, many years that we lived by was the Challenger sale.
Okay.
So there's all sorts of different methodologies. There's solution selling, right? So the Challenger sale is all about understanding the challenges of your audience, really, really understanding the challenges, the problems, the issues, and then showing them and telling them how you could build solutions around those things. So, and then becoming that trusted advisor. So I just know this all the time. I mean, it takes a little while to get trust. Your customer has to trust you. They really have to trust you like you're their doctor for whatever particular thing that you're doing. If your thing is testing, right? It's like they need to trust you. That is so important. And then once they trust you, and you're delivering and you're doing what you should be doing, it becomes a lot easier, right? But I think you're hitting the nail on the head with Fanatical Prospecting. My mantra has always been, if you know how to do sales and you know how to sell, who cares if you're not getting your foot in the door?
Right.
Right? Once you get a good meeting, great. You know how to sell. you get a referral, you know how to sell, it's easy. But the hardest thing to do is just continuously build a pipeline. And that's what I was always really good at. So fanatical prospecting, definitely recommend that.
Awesome. What were some of the things that held you back from starting PhillyTech earlier?
Yeah, I mean, it was really a mindset. It was an awareness of it. So if people are listening to this right now, I mean, you're working and you're thinking, I don't know if I could do this. I mean, I have a family. So as I had family, I had kids, and it's just a mindset, right? I'm always working for someone else. Like it's like a mindset. You have to change that mindset. The easiest way to make the shift is to become a solopreneur.
Right.
So if you look at what a solopreneur is a consultant, a 1099. So whatever you're doing today, whatever the expertise is, typically you could do some type of contract or consulting or something like that to help companies with your particular expertise. You could become a solopreneur. So, I mean, this is amazing, this story. 3 years ago, I was a solopreneur. Right now, I have 30 people in my company.
Yeah.
3 years later through the pandemic. So yeah, I joined a group. There's an actual really cool group that I don't know if I told you about this before, Jay, but it's called Co-Solo.
No.
So cosolo.co.
Okay.
So it is a solopreneur group, right? Where you basically have a board of advisors built in. So imagine having a team that you work with every week. So you have a board, you talk about what you do, you have things like hot seat and structured. So it's really good. So if people want to do it, it's good to take that step. Don't think I'm going to build this big company. Just think I'm going to be a consultant.
Yep.
Or a solopreneur, I'm going to do that. Then I'm going to start to build my company from there.
I love that. I love that so much. I consider myself a consulting evangelist. I think everybody on earth should. It's like the Rich Dad Poor Dad book. I mean, it's your 9 to 5 shouldn't be your only source of income. And once you kind of crack that code and you go, okay, I can be doing others. I can get other streams. That's where it kind of all starts to make sense. So I love that. I love the solopreneur kind of track. I mean, it's consulting, right? And like you said, so many people have experience in weird stuff and very specific stuff that like companies will pay you for. So I love that. So if you flashback, you knew all the stuff you knew in 2015 that you know now. How would you start it over again today? Like, what would kind of be your first steps if you kind of flash back and started PhillyTech over today in 2023?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, probably more focus, right? So you got to focus on a niche. You really, really got to focus on a niche, right? That's really important. And the other thing that I would say is huge for every person out there is you got to have coach, advisor. So one of the best things that you could do, whatever you're doing, is create an advisory board. Right? This is a group of loosely people. You're not paying any of these people a lot of times, but they're helping you. Right? You need to understand where your gaps are,
right?
What you're not good at. Right? So I learned that I wasn't really good at the finance. I wasn't really good at the operations. I was really great at the sales. I was really great at the business development. I could do marketing to a certain extent. So I had to do the finance. I had to do the operations better. Then I learned about what real marketing was, and it helped me take sales to the next level. So I would say that look at your gaps. You have to figure out what you don't know. You have to be aware of what you don't know. Right. And that's really hard to figure out. Like, I'm in this solopreneur group. The biggest challenge of this solopreneur group is they don't know how to sell. And they don't know how to lead. I'm like, they don't know how to do lead gen. They don't know how to sell. They don't know how to do anything. And I'm just like, I don't know. How are you guys even in business? Like, I mean, a lot of these solopreneurs, I'm like, how are you even doing work? Right. So they're getting referrals, things like that. So you really got to know what you don't know. And then you got to find those people. It could be an unpaid advisor. It could be a coach, right? It could be It could just be a friend that you know that is really good at something that you could just talk to. I have a guy who's one of my advisors that I text when I have issues. I just text him questions and he answers them. It's great.
Wow.
Things
Yeah,
like that.
I like that. I like that a lot. I started to put monthly standing meetings on the calendar with other agency owners that I kind of respect, and I see things in them that I lack in myself, and I do get that same kind of thing. Just once a month, we sit down for 30 minutes or an hour. We talk about lead gen, we talk about tools, we talk about LinkedIn, we talk about finance, we talk about market, whatever it is, and that's been super helpful. So I love that. How would you find the right coach, right? Because I've been very anti-coach at earlier in my career, because I thought like it was just this thing that it was just another kind of service that somebody was offering for a fee. How would you find a coach that kind of fits with you, or how would you select a coach, or do you think that's even the right approach? Maybe your advisory board is kind of the first step. Which of those would you do first? How would you find those people to network with?
Yeah, I would start to learn about yourself and where your gaps are. And I would start asking people you trust for referrals. I'd start looking in LinkedIn. I'd start doing searches, right? I mean, before I had coaches, so I had a few unpaid advisors that were just
Mm-hmm.
helping me. So that's how I started. So that unpaid advisor now is one of my coaches. He's actually my my head of my CFO slash COO.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got a growth coach. So in Scott Messer, I got a growth coach. And then I have this marketing advisor, because he's really helping take me to this next level of sales and make so the stuff, when you see the stuff that I put out, it's, oh my gosh, like if you saw the stuff that I put out like a few years ago compared to now, it's just upping the professionalism of it. It's
Mm-hmm.
upping the brand, it's making your brand a little more powerful, right? And it's just like, so you just got to say to yourself, well, where's my biggest challenge with my gap? And I was a BD sales guy, so it was operations, it was like finance, it was those. I didn't want to do that. So
Right.
if I needed to scale, I needed that person to help me scale. Then
Mm-hmm.
once I got that in place, I said, how do I really generate leads better than I'm doing it now? How do I do
Mm-hmm.
sales better? So then I upped the professionalism of everything, all my content, my web presence. So it's not only your web presence, it's your sales presentations, it's your proposals, it's basically just upping it, making it look like $1 million brand that
Right.
it is. So, I would just start talking to people you trust. Just start talking to people you know, like, and trust, and asking for their opinions.
I love that. So let's pivot a little bit. I think you mentioned at some point that you're 49. You're a very young looking 49.
Thanks.
What are three things that you're kind of trying to do to increase and maintain your longevity? Right. I mean, you have kids. I have kids, and we're all trying to stay alive as long as we can. What are some of the things you're doing to kind of focus yourself on health, at least sometimes during the day?
Yeah, I've got some quirky things that I do. That's a very interesting question. So I'll tell you at a high level, one of the things that I think is one of the most important things to be successful in life is to have a morning routine,
Mm-hmm.
right? So there are free books on YouTube. So there's morning routine books, right? So it's like I have a morning routine, right? My morning routine, I get up, take a hot shower, turn it into a cold shower for the last minute, right? I actually do a light stretching yoga routine. I have a big shower, right? So it's weird
Mm-hmm.
people think about it. So I do this light stretching yoga routine in the shower, like at the end.
Sure.
Then I'll go out, I'll have a big glass, 24 ounces of water, I'll have my vitamins, right? Then I'll go work out, right? Then after I work out, I have my to-dos, right? I'm looking at my day. I use a tool in Google called Keep.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to have a morning routine that works for you,
Yep.
right? So holistically, a morning routine. And then what else? got to be working out. For me personally, working out in that morning routine, yoga, meditation,
Yep.
right? So I went, what really changed my life around a lot. And I did, I believe in like manifesting and things like that. So
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Joe Dispenza
Okay.
is phenomenal. Teaches you how to meditate. I mean, this is a real cool topic for me. I really feel like we're all gods.
Mm-hmm.
So if you believe, if like, again, I'm Catholic, I mean, if you believe that if we are all sons and daughters of God, just think about that. If you're like, oh, okay, I get that premise, then we're all gods. We all have the ability to manifest our destiny. You got to have an aim. Very, very important. So
Mm-hmm.
every day when I wake up and I do this morning routine, I come to my notebook, I write in my notebook every day, I want to be the number one resource for SaaS and high tech hiring.
Right.
Every day, want to be
Yep.
the number one. And then what happens is when you do that, when you have an aim, the world just starts to set itself up for you.
Yep. Yep.
Right. So it's yoga, it's meditation, it's working out, it's a morning routine, right? We are creatures of habit, right? When you're not feeling good, most of the time it's because your habits and you're busy, your kids, something's screwing you up, right? That's why you don't feel good. Maybe you got in a little fight with your wife or your spouse or your partner. It's like something's messing up your routine.
Yep.
Right? So you got to be able to get back to it quick and get back on what is your aim? What is your life? What are you trying to do? Things like that.
No, I like that. Those are all fantastic things. I love the morning routine part because that also changed my life. Just getting those, the 5 a.m. wake up,
Nice.
the workout, the stretch, the meditation, all the stuff that basically you just said, like that. I mean, you feel like you could run through a brick wall if you hit all those things. I call it my 5 for 5. I got, I do my wake up at 5, I work out, I stretch, I meditate, and then I journal a little bit. So very similar to your list of
I
things
love it.
there.
5 for 5. That's
5 for 5. I stole that from Anthony Gargano, the 4 for 4 from 97.5.
That's a good LinkedIn. That's a good LinkedIn post. A 5 for 5.
5 for 5. See, there you go. But one thing you mentioned there that I am curious about. I constantly am on the search for a method to stay with my to-dos, right? Like I have a big click up list of my to-dos and I try to kind of every morning I'll go through essentially my backlog or the night before and I'll line up the due dates and what I'm supposed to do. But I find myself, I do fall off that quite a bit and then I kind of get jumbled. I'm like, what am I even supposed to be doing today? How do you prioritize your to-do list and keep or wherever it is and kind of make sure that you stay up with it every day? Or is that just part of your daily routine and that's how you do it?
Let me tell you how I do it, and everybody does things differently. First off, got to give a plug on this because a guy you might know, his name's Michael Craig, right?
Mm-hmm.
So basically he told me about this book here. I don't know if you could see that, called Getting Things Done.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. So you, again, in order to get things done, you have to have a system, right? You have to have a system,
Right.
and it has to be simple, right? So I personally use Google Keep,
Mm-hmm.
right? Michael Craig, what he told us, he uses Evernote.
Okay.
And, other people might use a CRM, but sometimes I think it's way too complicated to use a CRM. So I could show you a demo of it sometime, Jay, but
Sure.
I
Yeah.
use Keep. And basically, the way it has it set it sets it up into these little quadrants. Like on your screen, there's like these quadrants of things that you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And basically I go into my Keep. It's organized. It has my to-dos. It has what I want to do. And you have to be updating it. You have to be doing that every day. So it's like you need a system of organization. So if you go in and read, I do Audible, Getting Things Done
Okay.
by David Allen.
I like that one.
He teaches you a system. It doesn't matter. I was using paper and pen for the longest time, and I was like, "Oh my God, I'm writing the same shit over and over and over again. This doesn't make sense."
Right.
I gotta do it another way. So I started using Keep, right? So that's what I use. So
I like that.
you
That
need
makes
to have a
sense.
system.
And do you update your like? Do you have kind of a when do you do your grooming of that list of things? Like, how do you kind of keep that manageable so it doesn't become what I love to refer to it as a landfill of to dos, right? Because I always end up with a big giant bucket of things that like I should at some point thought I was going to need to do, and then the next priority comes up and you end up with a list of 1,000 things. How do you? What's your process for kind of manicuring that list, and do you or you just create it every day? Like, what's your process for kind of for keeping that tamed?
It's not a list, so it's a system of work.
Okay.
So lists is the first step, right?
Mm-hmm.
But so you have to have a system by which you're working in this system. So Keep is actually the foundation of the system. And then I check things off. I write notes on things. I'll take things, I'll move it to another category. Like, so if you could picture like a screen where there's all these quadrants or buckets of
Mm-hmm.
things,
Yep.
right? And then I'm moving them consistently around these different quadrants, but you need a system to do work,
Right.
right? It needs to be a system where it starts, it moves to another place, it moves to another place, it comes off the list, it goes somewhere else. Like if you don't have a system, you're never going to be able to be really highly productive. So he teaches you that system in the book. And I didn't even really have to read the book. Is like I listened to a few chapters in Audible, and I was like, oh, I understand. Like I just kind of got it right off. You need a system, and then you need technology wrapped around that system,
Got it.
right?
That
And
makes sense.
you need to be working in this thing. So say your place is HubSpot. Like,
Mm-hmm.
do you use a CRM?
Yeah. Yep.
Right. So say you have a CRM, right? You need to have a place where you go. It
Yep.
could be a sauna, right? It needs to be some tool that allows you to organize yourself. So that's how you do it.
Yeah.
That's how
I'm
you
gonna
do
have
it.
to check that book out because I've got the list part down. I do need more of a system though. I like that. All right, let's move to the mystery question. My favorite part of the podcast. It's very
Right.
very easy, but um, it's a good question. What would you do? Anything in the world, physically, whatever, if you knew you couldn't fail?
Wow. If I knew that I couldn't fail, what would I do?
Yep.
Yeah, so I have this software product that I built.
Mm-hmm.
It's called UProspect.
Okay.
It is for lead generation, so it's a working, running product. The audience for this product is every knowledge worker, and there are 1 billion knowledge workers. I would launch that product and I would sell it and have value to everyone. It's a lead generation platform
Mm-hmm.
to help you build your brand and generate leads. And at some point in time, I'm going to launch it. But if I knew that I couldn't fail, I would launch that, and I would have 1 billion users using it, and I'd be the guru. I call it a digital business card, but
Mm-hmm.
it's unlike your typical digital business card that you think is a digital business card.
Right.
It's more like a digital branding card.
Okay.
It allows you to very, very quickly build your brand because there's a big challenge out there. The big challenge is, what do you do, Jay? Right? Like when I'm trying to figure out what you do,
Mm-hmm.
I gotta go. Like I go to your LinkedIn, I go to your website. I'm like, what does he do? What do you really do? Like
Mm-hmm.
this is a basically card that just you're able to define very quickly what you do, so people understand it in like a couple seconds,
Right.
and then you could use it to generate leads. So I would launch that, and there'd be 1 billion people using it. Right, it'd be like the Elon Musk of lead generation. Right, it'd be like we'd be
Elite
putting it in
Musk. I like
it'd be on a car, like in a rocket. We'd be rocketing up the card up there. So yeah, things like that.
I love that answer. All right, well, let's wrap it there, man. This was a lot of fun.
Cool.
Like I said, you are kind of a staple. You know, there's some kind of core folks that, as I've learned about the Philly tech scene. Chris Sarah and these other kind of people who just are pillars of the community and the tech community. I think you're one of those people, and I feel very lucky to have had you on today. So,
Thanks. Thanks.
um,
I appreciate it. I really, really
thank you,
appreciate it.
thank you for coming on, and let's do lunch soon. All right, buddy.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, it's great
Absolutely. Let's
having
do
you
it.
on. I'll talk to you soon. All right. Thanks,
All
Mike.
right. Absolutely. Take
See you,
care.
buddy. Thanks, man.